Hi everyone, welcome to Bard Graduate Center. My name is Emma Cormack and I'm an associate curator here at Bard Graduate Center Gallery. Today my colleague Michele Majer and I are thrilled to share the exhibition Threads of Power, Lace from the Textilmuseum St. Gallen with you. The exhibition is a collaboration between Bard Graduate Center and the Textilmuseum St. Gallen, which is located in eastern Switzerland, about an hour from Zurich by train. The exhibition is curated by Michele and I and our colleague Ilona, who is curator at the Textile Museum. This exhibition takes as its foundation a show that the Textile Museum staged in 2018-2019 called Lace and Status, which was curated by Barbara Karl. That exhibition showcased the museum's collection of historic lace and stretched from European lace's 16th century origins to 1800. In bringing the show to New York, we've expanded it in terms of chronology, stretching into the present day with a focus on St. Gallen's continued textile production. And at the beginning here in the first gallery, we've included information about hand lace making techniques, and throughout, wherever possible, included information about the women and girls who made these pieces on view. Two contrasting perspectives inform this exhibition's title, Threads of Power. In the first, lace is an exalted handmade commodity, signifying the wealth, taste, and prestige of its wearers, that is, men and women at the pinnacle of the European social hierarchy from the 16th century onward. In the second, lace shows us the unequal balance of power between those who design, sell, and wear lace and the lacemakers themselves. Surviving examples of costly handmade lace on view here thus enable us to envision the material worlds of the powerful, but also connect us to the lives of the highly skilled, poorly paid lace-making women whose names are no longer known to us. The first thing visitors encounter in the lobby of the BGC Gallery is a specially commissioned bobbin lace collar made by lacemaker Ilona Laux. The finished piece is presented alongside a portrait of Ilona wearing the collar and a time-lapse video of her making it.
2 years ago, I received an email out of the blue from two of the curators of this exhibition, Emma Cormack and Michele Majer. And they asked if I would be interested in creating an original piece of lace for this exhibition, actually to open this exhibition. And of course, I jumped at the chance. I was so excited to have this opportunity. And they gave me also free range to basically make whatever I wanted, which was a little intimidating. But I thought immediately of my favorite piece in the St. Gallen lace collection and in the Metz collection, which was circa 1600 approximately strip of punto in aria needle lace from northern Italy, depicting the story of Judith and Holofernes. And this piece, this story of Judith overcoming and this oppressive Holofernes and liberating her people is one that seems to have really resonated with historic lace makers, because I've now counted 9 pieces of lace that tell this story from this time period. And it's one that you don't see depicted in other textile art forms like embroidery from the time period. So it's sort of, I wonder and I project that perhaps something about this story of female empowerment resonated with these lace makers who so often were underpaid and undervalued, working in basements, making expensive textiles for wealthy men and women that they themselves could never afford to keep. So I decided to pay tribute to the story and to the history of lace makers by recreating this design in a 5-lobed collar in red silk thread. So it's a little bit like, sort of wearing it, you sort of embody the decapitation motif of the red around your throat. But so the scallops, there's on either side in the front, there's Judith with the head of Holofernes and her sword. And then once you tie it closed in the front, her maidservant Abra is holding this bag out to receive Holofernes' head. And then in the back panel, it falls in the back when you're wearing it, is Holofernes headless in his crimson tent. So all of the motifs specifically take inspiration from the historic example in the show. Overall, the piece took me 200 hours to make, so 150 hours of stitching on my bobbin pillow, and then 40 hours of finishing, stitching the silk threads in place to secure them for stability, and then trimming them off. So lots of thread management at the end there. And then finally, 10 hours just to remove the pins from the pillow. So you can see all of this process in the gallery in the video, which is sped up to 6 minutes. But in real life, it's 200 hours of work. And the other thing that was very poignant for me when I was working about this and working on this project and thinking about these lacemakers and women's history was, and how this story sort of empowered women, was the story of Artemisia Gentileschi, who is my favorite Baroque painter of history. And she painted repeatedly in her lifetime the story of Judith and Holofernes due to her own personal story. So while I was working on this project and Roe versus Wade was overturned, I in turn channeled my own rage about this injustice into the work as I was doing it. So it really was very meaningful and powerful for me to work on this project, and quite cathartic. So the other thing that Michele and Emma commissioned was a portrait of me wearing the collar, because again, lacemakers were not often afforded the opportunity to wear their own work. So I knew immediately I wanted to work with my friend Rose Callahan, who's an incredible photographer, and that we wanted to pay tribute to Artemisia. So in the portrait that we took for the show, I'm wearing the collar. I have a dagger in front of one eye, and it is called For Artemisia.
Lace refers to many forms of non-woven textiles with designs characterized by open spaces. European needle and bobbin laces developed in the mid to late 16th century from embroidery and braiding, respectively. Using these two basic tools, needles and bobbins, to manipulate thread, female lace makers created a wide range of trimmings and accessories, from simple, narrow edgings to wide, densely patterned collars. The first gallery in the exhibition focuses on the two primary hand lace making techniques that we focus on throughout the installation, that is needle lace and bobbin lace. So here in this section, we've included process videos to give visitors a sense of the techniques involved in making these objects, as well as in-process objects themselves. So here in this case, you see an example of a 19th century in-process needle lace. The lace maker would work with a pattern drawn on a parchment backing. She would lay down outlining stitches that pierced through that parchment backing and really form the scaffolding for the design she's working with. As she went, she would fill in motifs with primarily buttonhole stitches. Those stitches do not pierce the parchment backing, but they are again held on by those scaffolding stitches she laid down initially. After she was finished filling in all of the motifs and these three-dimensional outlines, she was able to cut those initial outlining stitches and lift the lace from its backing.
This is a late 19th century pillow on which bobbin lace was made. The lace maker would have twisted and crossed these bobbins from one side to the other to create this type of lace, which is here that you see on the top, known as torchon. So the bobbins on this pillow are made of wood. They're wound with linen thread, and they would have been operated in pairs. Not all bobbins were necessarily wood. They could be made of bone or other materials, and they're often decorated, either painted or embellished with glass beads at the bottom, and they might be particular to different regions.
This is a small section about textile and lace printed pattern books. It's a genre of book that emerged in the 1520s in Central Europe. We have 3 examples here, 2 of which are lace-specific pattern books. This is one of our favorite objects in this section. It's a lace pattern book designed by an Italian woman named Isabella Catanea Parasole in 1625. She was special because she worked in the lace industry. She was a lace maker herself, and she also illustrated plates for botanical books.
Luxurious textiles such as lace have long been an essential part of Christian religious rites. Alongside sumptuous furnishings of silk, velvet, and lavish embroideries, ecclesiastical lace, including altar frontals, chalice covers, and priests' vestments, represented divine glory and was thus an important element of the Holy Mass. Lace intended for use in the liturgy often featured religious iconography, such as monograms of Christ and depictions of saints. Historically, The church was an important buyer of lace, and the clergy, who followed the court's taste in rich fabrics, often with some delay, also sought to acquire this symbol of status and wealth. Ecclesiastical institutions also often received donations of this expensive commodity from elite patrons. The church benefited financially from the lace-making industry, as much of the lace in Europe was created by women in religious institutions. Many girls born into noble families were sent to convents to become nuns, some against their will, where they made lace in strictly regulated environments. Handcrafts like lace-making were considered expressions of a virtuous and contemplative life at this time, and therefore suitable activities for pious women.
This is one of the star objects from the Textile Museum's collection. It's a 12-foot-long golden needle lace antependium, or altar frontal. It's made with metallic thread, bronze-wrapped silk, and it's rare to see needle lace made out of metallic thread. Usually you just see bobbin lace. This piece was made circa 1700, and it was, as far as we know, commissioned by or for a monastery. The scenes on the lace show five sort of vignettes of the founding of this monastery. So between these 5 scenes, you'll see lots of floral and foliate motifs interspersed with small figures. There's a man here and a child who look like they've just been hunting. There are small woodland animals. And also, if you look closely between these 5 scenes, you can see very clearly that the pieces were stitched together. Large pieces of lace like this were made by multiple people and then joined. Here we are in the gallery discussing styles and lace at the Habsburg court. The Spanish Habsburgs were the dominant European power from the 16th through the first half of the 17th century, with influence that extended to many areas of Europe and the Americas. For these elite men and women, expensive handmade needle and bobbin laces from Italy and the southern Netherlands were indispensable. Spanish society during this period was rigidly hierarchical, and dress was the primary mode through which to signal social and economic class. Sumptuary laws decreed by successive kings aimed to restrict who could wear different types of lace, but these sanctions were often flouted, as consumers of various social classes were eager to acquire and be depicted in this desirable textile. Spain's imperial power under the Habsburg monarchs is on full view in the portraits of its rulers and nobles, arrayed in costly silk, velvet, and lace. The black garments typical of court fashions of this time provided the perfect foil for white lace accessories, including collars of oversized proportions and prominent cuffs.
In this case here, we highlight Flemish bobbin lace of the mid-17th century. Flemish bobbin lace was one of the most popular at this time. It was renowned for the fineness of the thread. In this corner, we have an example of a collar, which we call a Bertha collar. This wide band of exceptionally fine Flemish bobbin lace that looks almost cloth-like, but is in fact lace. It would have been worn across the top of a woman's gown. In the mid-17th century, the neckline was well off the shoulder, so this would have been very prominent in a woman's ensemble.
On this side of the gallery is a small section about lace worn in what is today Latin America. In the 18th century, men and women in the region closely followed European fashions. Ready access to fine textiles from across the Atlantic enabled enthusiastic consumers to demonstrate their awareness of current styles. Foreign visitors to the Spanish colonies often remarked on the inhabitants' sartorial splendor, in which lace was especially prized. Although European fashions were quickly transmitted to the Spanish colonies, they were not unreservedly copied. At the viceregal courts and throughout Spanish-American society, variations, adaptations, and regional preferences, especially among women, characterized dress.
This gallery focuses on fashions in lace in Bourbon, France, from the mid-17th to the end of the 18th century. We discussed the establishment of the French lace industry under Louis XIV and his finance minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, and the development of needle lace known as Point de France, characterized by delicate, symmetrically composed designs that replaced Point de Venise as the most desirable type of lace by the end of the 17th century. One of the star objects in the exhibition is a rare surviving Point de France Frelange dating to about 1695. At the entrance to the gallery is a 1761 portrait by François Hubert Drouet of Marie Rintault, a singer and courtesan, that demonstrates the importance of lace in the completion of a fashionable ensemble, and Ranto's access to an abundance of high-quality lace. On this side of the gallery, we feature needle and bobbin lace caps, lappets, and sleeve ruffles that represented the three most important accessories in the female wardrobe throughout the 18th century, and we display them in chronological order so that visitors can see the development in both style and shape.
In this gallery, we include 3 18th century garments to give visitors a sense of how lace would have been incorporated into a fashionable ensemble, both for men and for women. In this corner here is a Chinese brocaded silk robe à la française, accessorized with lace around the neckline and at the sleeves. Behind the dress is a reproduction of a portrait of Madame de Pompadour that was done around the time of her death, or just before her death in 1764. And after her death, an inventory of her wardrobe was taken, which took over 2 days to list, and the lace in her inventory totaled almost half the value of her inventory of clothing.
This gallery provides a transition from handmade, or what was referred to as real lace, of the 17th and 18th centuries, to the imitation or machine-made lace of the 19th century. While handmade lace made a slow but successful comeback after its decline, precipitated by the French Revolution, by the mid-19th century, machine-made lace was able to closely copy its much more expensive counterpart for a fraction of the cost. This luxury textile that was previously worn by those at the top of the social hierarchy was now available to most middle-class women.
In this case here, we feature a sumptuous handmade black silk Chantilly shawl dating to about 1860. The shawl, as you can see, is characterized by these luxuriant floral and foliate motifs and strap work. And these were highly fashionable in the mid-19th century. The scale of the shawl was intended to accommodate a dress like this one, dating to the mid-1850s, which was worn over crinoline petticoats, so creating this voluminous silhouette. This dress was worn by Fanny Longfellow, the wife of the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. She wore it to what she described as a pageant in 1860. And we think that it's a dress that she described as her Spanish dress, which probably refers to the color combination of this citron yellow with black lace. The lace that you see on trimming the skirt of this dress and the bodice is probably machine-made lace as opposed to the handmade shawl, which we just looked at.
The top floor of the exhibition focuses on the lace and embroidery industry in St. Gallen and the surrounding region from the 19th century to today. The city was known for high-quality linen in the early modern period, and at the beginning of the 19th century, it was the trading center for a local rural industry in which many women hand-embroidered cotton fabrics destined primarily for export. By the mid-1840s, hand-embroidery machines enabled the simultaneous production of multiple stitched motifs. Within a decade, St. Gallen was exporting large quantities of machine embroidery throughout Europe and to the United States after the end of the American Civil War. By the 1870s, complex designs and open-work textiles were available. Then, at the beginning of the 1880s, the first chemical lace appeared on the European market. Thanks to these technological advancements, the embroidery and lace industries in the area expanded significantly. By 1910, St. Gallen was the world leader for machine-embroidered products. Between 1907 and 1918, machine-made embroideries were the top export in Switzerland, with a record 210 million francs exported in 1912. A large portion of these exports were destined for consumers in the United States. A large portion of the historic laces featured in the exhibition were collected by a man named Leopold Ichle. He was a textile manufacturer in Switzerland in the late 19th, early 20th century, and he operated a firm called Ichle Frères. They were producers of machine embroidery and lace. And he, in the last 20 years of his life, he collected many examples of historic lace and embroidery as inspiration for his company's production. In this case, we have examples of those historic pieces that Leopold collected, along with the chemical lace pieces that he created from that inspiration. So here is an example of a piece of reticella made between 1590 and 1620, and the chemical lace imitation that he created in the late 19th century. Between 1904 and 1908, he donated a large portion, about 1,500 pieces, of his collection to the Textile Museum, and that forms the core of their lace collection today.
Textile manufacturers in St. Gallen have maintained a reputation for high-quality fabrics and continue to focus on an international clientele. Local firms, Forster Rohner and Jacob Schlepfer, both established in 1904, and Bischoff Textile, founded in 1927, market chemical lace and other textiles to couturiers. In addition to releasing seasonal collections generated by their design teams, these companies also collaborate directly with fashion houses, including Prada, AKRIS, and Oscar de la Renta, to create custom products. In this gallery, you see examples of various chemical laces produced in St. Gallen. It's a very versatile textile that can be made in a wide variety of forms. Some designers prefer large-scale or geometric designs that incorporate innovative materials, while others favor designs that resemble antique, handmade bobbin and needle laces.
So here in the last gallery of the exhibition, we have the star of the third floor, which is Michelle Obama's 2009 inauguration dress designed by Isabel Toledo.
The dress and the matching coat are made from a felted wool lace known as guipure, made by the company, St. Gallen-based company, Forster Rohner. The company was established in 1904, and it's still in operation today.
And in her memoirs, Isabel Toledo talks about taking inspiration directly from the lace. Rather than designing the silhouette and then choosing the fabric, she found a swatch of this lemongrass lace, and she said she was immediately inspired to start designing. And that for her, lace was one of her favorite textiles because it is both very ancient and very modern. The dress is on view next to a sketch by Ruben Toledo, alongside a swatch from the Forster Rohner archives. This final piece in the exhibition is an example of what St. Gallen-based manufacturer Jacob Schlepfer calls hypertube guipure lace. So essentially it's 3D printed silicone lace. They can print onto a fabric ground or onto a mold. But here we wanted to end the exhibition with this piece. In its making, it's not similar at all to handmade lace or machine-made lace, but in its form and its color and the motifs that you see, it really recalls the pieces down below in the rest of the exhibition.
While the names of the lacemakers whose handmade creations appear in Threads of Power were rarely recorded, we can still honor their art and labor. As practitioners of a living art, contemporary lacemakers carry forward the design knowledge and hand skills developed over 500 years of lacemaking. Subverting the historical power dynamic of the invisible lacemaker and the wealthy patron, many contemporary lacemakers use the medium to assert their identity, exploring issues of gender, community, and ritual that bridge the past and present. This Lacemakers Studio, a collaboration between Bard Graduate Center and Brooklyn Lace Guild, celebrates this history of tradition and innovation.
So right now I'm doing some needle lace. I prefer needle lace for some reason, but I do a lot of work with bobbin lace. You could also refer as embroidery work, but this is using the needle and thread, very simple work that we can do at home. And I think this is perhaps easier in terms of technique than the rest of the lace techniques like bobbin lace or tatting or crochet.
I am tatting. Tatting is actually not in the exhibit. It's a somewhat newer lace in the realm of lace making, but it's a knotting technique that uses a slip stitch over a core thread, and you'll often see it mistaken for crochet, but it's you'll see it a lot on trims, lots of handkerchiefs, things like that. You'll see it a lot.
It's been such a joy to, I think my very first experience was with the Story Hour and working with this young children and showing them how to do the lace making, the bobbin lace making, and their excitement and the natural ability children have, and having the people come in to the Lacemakers studio. Some of them come in at the end of the exhibit, and some have come in the beginning before they've seen anything, because they want to be able to really understand what they're looking at. And so it's been very fun to share and watch them try. We've had a try it pillow, and also demonstrate the difference between the needle lace and the bobbin lace. And then hearing their own stories, their own connections with lace, their grandma's lace, their family lace, experiences from like their lace stash at home, and trying to have a better appreciation and understanding of what they have.
I'm making an edging. You see it's wrapped around here, but it's getting pretty long. It's been fantastic. It's been so much fun. I mean, a lot of the people who come through are themselves artists and textile people, and so it's fun to meet them and hear about their practice. Some of the people are people I actually know that I haven't seen in a while, because, you know, I know a lot of lace makers, and a lot of the lace makers are flying in from other states and even Canada. So that's been terrific fun to see all of my old friends after the pandemic has kept us apart.
It's so hard to pick a favorite piece in this exhibition because there's so many incredible pieces, really breathtaking. But one of my favorite pieces is on the first floor, and it's a polychrome needle lace of colorful silk and gold wrapped metal thread that was made probably in a convent in northern Italy around 1700. I don't remember the date exactly, but it's a really unusual and rare technique. There's a related technique in Spain called Frisado de Valladolid, which some of us in Brooklyn Lace Guild actually studied on a trip in 2017, and it's really labor intensive but so beautiful. And it's nice to have people see that lace wasn't always white linen, that in fact it can be very colorful and beautiful.
So today I'm working with this lace community who's preserving Portuguese and Dutch lace from the 16th and 17th century. So I see the similarities in certain motifs, certain patterns. So I feel really nice that some of these forgotten practices, forgotten things that we can use in these contemporary platforms. So I love to see all those roots and the connection. And I see some of those in this exhibition, especially in the first floor. That is my favorite.
So right now I'm working on a little snowflake, basically, for an ornament. And I've done quite a lot of designing and playing around with tatting specifically. I really love the geometry of it, and that you can flip things around and kind of do a lot of repeat motifs and get really intricate patterns from it.
I'm on my 5th little icicle here. These are going to be ornaments from my family's, my sister's and my mother's Christmas trees. So I learned how to crochet as a young child, sitting on my grandmother's lap and just watching what she was doing. And then I went and got my own thread and crochet hook. And so I didn't realize that I was crocheting incorrectly, quote unquote, until I was an adult, because I was just doing it the way I thought I was seeing my grandmother do it. And then when I was a preteen, my grandmother taught me how to tat. And so I started tatting then, and then I married into a family of bobbin lace makers. And so it was always one of my goals to learn bobbin lace making. And in 2006, I took my first bobbin lace class, and my very first piece is on the try-it pillow. So this piece right here was my very first piece of bobbin lace. And when we've had visitors here, we explain that bobbin lace making is a woven lace, and but it frees you from the rectangle. Like weaving on a loom keeps you in the shape of a rectangle. And here, my teacher drew a squiggly line and some zigzags to help me know where to put my pins, and I was hooked.
I like to make the point that it's easy to design in needle lace. I decided to take a picture of the bard off the internet and make a version of it in lace. It still has a way to go. But this has, brought me, ever closer to the contemplation of the size of the thread in these pieces on display, because the thread is so fine. It's thread that we can't get now, and there's so much definition that you can have with it. And in fact, I'm going down in thread size from 36/2 to 60/2, and then finally 80/2 here as I seek to get more definition. And I just marvel at the pieces downstairs. I think my favorite piece is the piece that has eagles in it and what I believe to be are unicorns, although the label text says horses. So this has just been so much fun too. I've been, as I work on, I think of other ways of doing the architectural features.
Lace really is a medium of storytelling, and there's so much history with the makers and particularly the women involved in the field. But I think my favorite lace history story is actually a bit of a true crime story, and that is the story of yellow lace. In the early 17th century, it was popular to starch your white linen lace in different colors, could be blue and pink, but also saffron yellow dye was very popular. And so basically there's this saffron dyer, Anne Turner, in England in the early 17th century, who was able to, by her access to dyes on the black market in London, procure arsenic for this woman, Frances Howard, that she was the lady in waiting for, so that basically Frances could get rid of this man that objected to Frances's marriage annulment and to marry her new lover. So they got rid of him together. His name was Thomas Overbury, and Frances was able to remarry. But then some letters were discovered a few years later, and basically Anne Turner, the lace dyer, was executed for this crime wearing yellow lace to make a point about lace and vanity. And in fact, the executioner wore yellow lace too. So after that, it quickly went out of fashion. Where the way that they poisoned him was with a poison enema, but anyway. I left that part out. I gave you the PG-13 version instead of the R-rated version.
We had some time with the Brooklyn Lace Guild members, so we shared our knowledge, and we saw some beautiful lace from different members' archives, and also we met some lace enthusiasts, those who came for the exhibition. So this is the Hermes lipstick shapes. I really like geometry, so I started doing this. I spent a couple of hours doing this, and I really enjoyed it.
On the 5th anniversary of the Brooklyn Lace Guild, we decided to make these commemorative bobbins, and we thought, because we represent the gritty face of urban lace making, that we would memorialize Pizza Rat in the form of doily rat. These are both doily rat. And also Bagel Pigeon in the form of rough pigeon.
Lace to me is where the spaces in between are as integral to the pattern as the actual foundations that are making up the shapes. And I think lace can be pretty broad, but I think what I consider kind of the true laces are the needle lace, bobbin lace, and tatting, in that they're structurally really made for the decoration. That's their primary function, and not so much structural. And so I love that it is kind of highlighting the joy of being frivolous and being very fashionable, and that being the point is really fun.
The first time I was here was right before Story Hour, with the Drag Story Hour. And so I was setting up the pillow, listening to the story time, and actually before the story telling, the children were making their own lace drawings using paper and colored pencils. And then they had their story time, and then they came and they got to do the try-it pillows. So if you look at, we have this memory here this will be what happened. This first little section is what happened for that very first story hour by the children.
It's been wonderful, even though people have seen the film downstairs of how it's made. They seem to really like to see it being made in person. So yeah, it's many people seem to enjoy it a great deal, and I'm sharing with them resources of how they can learn bobbin lace and needle lace online, and where they can get thread and needles and things like that. So that's, it's been a lot of fun to help people, who want to learn how to do it, to find the resources.
I'm a textile artist, generally speaking. I do a lot of different textiles, and I love demonstrating. And this show has been really exciting. It's been nice to see so many people come in and kind of get a real sense of what they're looking at. It's sometimes hard to tell just how extraordinary the work is that people have done in the past. And because we have the contrast between the machine-made laces and the handmade laces, it's been really nice for people to see people getting a sense of kind of how amazing the work is.
Well, I saw it being done in Bruges when I was on a family vacation, when I was an adolescent. And I thought it was really great, and I wanted to learn how to do it. And so later, when I was in high school, I located a woman in New Jersey who had learned lace making when she was growing up in a very famous lace town in Denmark called Turner. And the lace had actually already died out when she was there, when she was young. But the government of Denmark had sent teachers in to teach people it because they wanted to revive it as a heritage craft. Okay, so she must have learned it in the 1920s or 30s. And then she was teaching me in the 1970s. And here we are, like 100 years later, and I'm demonstrating here.
I work with bobbin lace community back in Sri Lanka, and they are preserving Portuguese and Dutch bobbin lace, which was introduced to Sri Lanka in the 16th century, 1505, when Portuguese arrived. So that's a forgotten craft, and these ladies are preserving this lace, so I started working with them. And these are some of my work. I decided to incorporate handmade lace into contemporary fashion. So also we have this collaboration piece, which we collaboratively work with Brooklyn Lace Guild lace members and Sri Lankan bobbin lace weavers. So this is our collaborative piece.
So the clicking is just the thread snapping between these two pressure things that are holding the shuttle. It's kind of like you're making a front and second half of a stitch. So you're actually going under and over the core thread and then flipping that thread in order for it to be a slip knot. And then once you've made a whole slew of stitches, you actually will pull on that core loop, and that creates what's called a ring. So when I learned, it was very helpful to have someone actually show the process, so that over, under, and then under, over. My favorite piece is the needle lace collar. It's a very kind of Art Nouveau collar that's, I think, on the third floor, because it's so beautifully done. It can be easily mistaken for machine lace, and that's so impressive to me. I also do like the machine-made laces. I think kind of embracing technology and the ability to really make things with different textures and different shapes that are not as easily done by hand is really kind of fun to play with as well.
This has been such a delightful experience for me to be reunited with the Brooklyn Lace Guild in person. And I have just truly enjoyed being able to come together as friends and colleagues and lace makers and share our thoughts and our ideas and to be together in person. And I've cherished it, and I'm going to really miss this chance to get together with everybody.